Will everyone please join me in Gassho and recite the Nembutsu with me? Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namandats, 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 namandats. Good morning, everyone. It's so wonderful to see so many of you here. When we just, I think, got into summer, I'm certain many of you were very busy yesterday with various activities and going to various events, probably all around the state of Washington. So bravo for demonstrating your First Amendment rights, but then of course also bravo for coming here for service after you're probably tired after those times as well. So as you probably remember, and maybe this was kind of in the back of your minds or you might have forgotten about it, but I was talking with John Inge, and we decided it was a good idea to hear from all of you and from many people in the Sangha who may have had questions or things to ask, the sensei. And there's been this wooden box in front in the foyer in the temple here, and I have just brought it up now because I'm going to start the series of answering some of these questions. Now, I have looked at many of the questions that have been submitted in the box, and they are anonymous, right? So don't ever worry about, leaving your name here. And of course, if you accidentally write your name, I will not, when I read the question, I will not say who wrote this, who wrote the question, of course. So I have read all of the questions in the box. I won't be able to answer all of them in just one session, unless all of you are comfortable staying here for about 3 hours, but I don't think that's the case. So we're going to start with the first few questions here that have been submitted in the box. All right. Okay. Question number 1. What if I don't agree with something Sensei says, like how we don't have souls? Ooh, interesting. First off, let's answer the first part of the question. What if you don't agree with something I say? That's okay. I'm not up here to dictate to all of you how you're supposed to believe, right? I'm not here to tell you, like, you're supposed to believe this. The interesting thing I love about Buddhism is that, it's not a religion. It's still a religion, by the way. Let's be clear and let's be transparent, right? It's still very much religion. But the one thing that I do love about Buddhism is that mostly it's a religion of self-introspection, right? So if you disagree with something that I say, that's totally fine. Let's actually, and you actually are more than welcome to come up and discuss that with me. A couple of people have in the past and say, you said this thing, I don't really think of it that way. And you know what? Just because you don't agree with something that I say doesn't mean that you're wrong. It doesn't mean that I'm wrong. It also means that there's multiple ways of thinking about something, right? And that's not a bad thing. Again, I'm not here to dictate to you how you internally are supposed to believe, right? I am here to get you all to ask questions within yourselves, right? How does this make you feel? What does this message tell you, right? What did my story or what did the sermon, or I don't like to call it that, but Howa or Dharma talk, how did that speak to you? What aspects about it don't you understand or do you want more clarification on? These are questions that should always be popping up in your head. And in fact, I would go as far as to say that if you walk out this temple building saying, I fully understand this, I 100% know what this is now, I didn't do a good job. And in fact, I shouldn't, that should never be the case. You should always go outside these temple doors thinking about things more, not less, right? Thinking about self-introspection. How does this religion speak to you? What do you feel about this religion? Now, here's the interesting thing, like how we don't have souls. This is an interesting concept in Mahayana Buddhism. Okay, so when we talk about Hinduism, right, the Indian religion, there's a term called Atman. I want you all to say that with me. Atman, Atman, Atman. Okay, that is the type of word, or that is the concept of the idea of soul, right? Or this inherent, unchanging inner essence that never changes, that passes from vessel to vessel. That's in Indian Hindu religion, right? There's this inner essence that we always have that is in itself like this thing that is defined as you or me, right? And after we die, we become reborn as various animals or living beings, right? But, that essence is still that transmitted thing. Mahayana Buddhism turns this on its head, okay? Now, what was the word that I taught you to say? Atman, very good. But now there's another term that Mahayana Buddhism introduced called An-Atman. Say that with me, An-Atman, An-Atman. That means no self or no soul. Okay, now before I get into this part of this this particular part of the question, let me first say that when I say no soul, I am not saying you are not unique. I am not saying you are not special. And I'm also not saying that there isn't this version of you that doesn't exist, right? I'm not saying that you don't exist, right? Or that your existence is not valid. That's not what's being said here. Remember do you all remember, again, sort of the two big I's of Buddhism, right? The first I is impermanence, right? Impermanence means ever-changing, things that are changing all the time. And the second is interdependence. All of us are interlinked. All sentient beings are interlinked or interwoven in some way or another. So everything is always changing. When we say the concept of Atman or soul, right, we are basically saying that there is this element within us that never changes. There is this element within us that always stays the same. But let me ask you all this question. How many of you sincerely or truly believe or think the things that you thought or believe the things that you believe when you were 2 years old? Nobody raised their hand. How many of you are the same exact person that you were when you were 2 years old? Probably not. And then, remember, there was a point in time where we did not even exist, right? We ourselves were not here. And then something even more scary to think about, and that I bring up, is this idea that with as many ancestors, we think of me as just this one person, right? But as many ancestors as we've had, right? As it kind of branches out and continues to make this sort of huge reverse pyramid, right? If one of those people had not existed or did not do what they did in life, would you even be here? So what we're saying when we talk about no souls or not having souls, right, is what we're talking about is codependent arising. Or in order for us to exist, all these other elements have had to exist. And then our existence is also contingent on other existence as well. This is where Mahayana Buddhism starts to get really tricky and really deep into its philosophy. So we'll say things kind of like that may sort of slap us in the face, like no souls, right? But what's essentially being said here is also the Mahayana doctrine of sunyata, or emptiness. The concept of a table is not a table. Now, you all have tables in your house somewhere, probably. But there was a point in time where it was not a table. There was probably a point in time where it was a tree. Yes? There was probably a point in time, there is probably a time when you have a table and you will get rid of it to get a new table. And what happens to that old table? Well, hopefully someone else, it's still in good use so someone else can use it and it's recycled, right? But, what if it gets destroyed? What if it gets destroyed, or you take it to the dump and it gets crushed and becomes this wooden pile of mush? Is it still a table? Is it still the thing that it was before? This is the concept of no soul. But then in this aspect, it kind of counter and sort of not runs counter, but sort of raises more questions about the Pure Land, which actually, now that I have answered this question, we'll move on to the next one. Next question. I'm struggling to understand how or what is reborn in the Pure Land with the concept of no self. So I'm wondering if whoever wrote this question too, because right? So for those of you who are newcomers to the temple, one of the central doctrines of Jodo Shinshu Buddhism, or this school of Buddhism as it is that we give much reverence to Amida Buddha. Now, of course, what's depicted in the center or the central object of reverence is just a statue, right? And I shouldn't say just a statue, but it is a statue that is depicting a tangible image of Amida Buddha. The true essence and the true form of Amida Buddha is beyond our fathomable understanding because we are unenlightened. One of the whole concepts and the things that unites all of us as Jodo Shinshu Buddhists is that we are unenlightened. If you think that you're enlightened, that probably means you're not enlightened. But that's the whole reason why we have the Pure Land in the first place. This was so that Shakyamuni Buddha, the historical Buddha that lived 2,500 years ago, granted us access to the common people to practice forms of Buddhism. So when we ask ourselves, when you ask us, what is our practice as Jodo Shinshu Buddhists, it's placing our hands together and saying, Namo Amida Butsu. I take refuge and reliance on Amida Buddha's wisdom and compassion. Now, the other central point of this doctrine is that after we die, we are immediately born into the Pure Land. We are immediately born, we instantly attain birth, and then we come back to this world of samsara to guide others to the Pure Land. That is textual and orthodox speech of Jodo Shinshu Buddhism, translated almost verbatim. Okay? Now, to Western ears and modern ears, this may seem a little archaic, right? But I remind us again, this is a religion. This is a teaching of Buddhism that the Buddha taught according to the 3 Pure Land Sutras. But we have to first also remember, what is the point of the Pure Land in the first place, right? The point of the Pure Land is not to dwell forever in like a heavenly state, right? So what separates us, or what sort of differentiates us between Abrahamic religions, where you dwell in the kingdom of heaven forever or suffer for eternity in hell for all eternity, right? Is that the realm of the Pure Land, or the realms of the 6 cycles of samsara, are not forever. They are not eternal, right? So if you are stuck on the wheel of rebirth in samsara, you're constantly being reborn and die again, reborn and die again, reborn and die again, okay? And that means that, that eventually we all pass through the various realms of existence within a huge amount of time or various amounts of time. But the same is true with the Pure Land. Now, the traditional aspect of the Pure Land is that after you die, you get born into the Pure Land, and you also have to spend a lot of time there to truly train as a monk. The traditional understanding of the Pure Land was that the Pure Land is the ideal place to do ultimate and true Buddhist practices unhindered by the sufferings of the world here, okay? And therefore, in the Pure Land, you will truly become a Buddha. You will truly become enlightened. Shinran Shonin, our founder here, turned this theory on its head and says to us that the resolve and the dedication and the fortitude of going to the Pure Land happens in this life that we're living right now, here and now. Now, we still go to the Pure Land after we die, but it's almost instantaneous. We are instantly born, we are instantly awakened, and then we come back here to this world to guide others to the Pure Land. But if we go to the Pure Land, what does that mean? If we're dead and we're body, and it's just our body, right? And we are saying this concept of no soul, right? What goes to the Pure Land? One of my favorite answers to this question was answered by a professor named Dr. Mark Blum. And he is a very famous professor who lives in Berkeley, California, who is a professor of Cal University, or of Cal. And when he was asked this question once again by one of the minister's assistants attending a seminar, he just simply looked at them and responded, "Your consciousness." And I was like, wow, I love that answer, right? Our consciousness is born there. Once again, when I say the topic of no soul or no inner spirit, right, what I'm talking about is an inner essence of ourselves that is unchanging, that is like this constant thing. Similar to the idea or the notion that Shirley MacLaine said, I was Cleopatra in a previous life, right? Do we really know that? Heck, there would be a lot of historical people I would love to be, but that's probably not the case. And it's probably a little bit of the case too, right? Who knows what, who knows what influence and what causes and conditions a very famous and influential historical figure created from the distant past to land me where I am today. But when we say the concept of no self, I'm not saying, right, that there isn't a uniqueness about you or that there isn't this, idea or consciousness that you have that is not unique to the, to the concept of who you are right now. But that consciousness, that ideology, that consciousness is what's born in the Pure Land. And the other reason for the Pure Land's existence existence to this day, of course, is the fact that we are so far gone from the time of the Buddha. The Buddha lived 2,500 years ago, and the Buddha knew that he was not going to be around to teach us forever, right? His physical body, his physical form was not going to be here to teach us forever. So he actually shared with us an aspect of the Dharma, a teaching from the Dharma that we can tangibly see, understand, and fathom, that we can engage in, right? We all put our palms together and say, Namo Amida Butsu. How hard is that? For a newcomer, saying Namo Amida Butsu can be a bit challenging at first. But it's also not hard to just put your hands together and say Namo Amida Butsu, or I take refuge in Amida Buddha, right? That's all that our practice is. And even with this practice alone, right, the working of the Dharma, leading us to this practice, is a way for us to engage in the Dharma. So with this understanding, right, this is what is born in the Pure Land. Not like this soul that turns into an angel, but a consciousness that goes beyond the realm of the physical form that we know here and now. And if you have any more questions about, about the Pure Land, you're more than welcome to take my Jodo Shinshu 101 classes that are usually every second Wednesday of the month via Zoom at 6 p.m. So I do have monthly study classes that I host. And these concepts are things that we talk about. Unfortunately, and of course, as a Dharma talk, I shouldn't spend too much time, right, getting into the nitty-gritty of our doctrine. I need to come up with, examples that speak to you all, okay, or that you can relate to. Which actually brings me to the third and final question that I will be able to answer for today's service, okay? A big part of Shin Buddhism seems to be focused on what happens after we die. So what can we do to suffer less in this life? Very, very good question. Very, very good question. So it's very true that when we listen to the rhetoric, and especially if we go to a lot of memorial services, by the way, for those of you who are newcomers, one of the temple's main functions, or one of the main functions that we do is we hold memorial services to those who have passed or those who have been born in the Pure Land, I should say. And the memorials go 1 year, 3rd year, 7th year, 13th year, 17th year, 25th year, 33rd year, 50th year, right? We do these annual memorial services, for those people who are who very much want to hold services in memory of those who have long passed. And, you know, for a person who's new to Buddhism or new to the temples here, it could seem, man, you guys are, you know, I actually have heard this before, man, you guys are obsessed with death, right? You know, people have said before, like, man, you Jodo Shinchu Buddhists are kind of obsessed with death. It's kind of depressing, you know? And I'm like, that can be true. But death is also a reality. And death is also something that all of us, you, me, it's very true. It's not something we don't like to think about a lot, but we have to face eventually. We will come, you know, one of the things that also, you know, unites all of us in our unenlightenedness, but of all of us here, is that all of us will eventually die. And I think that's one of the concepts also that if, not necessarily that we focus on, but realize too, that if we can, you know, awaken to this, hopefully then we can suffer less in life. Think of it this way, right? We talk a lot about what happens after we die, but in reality what's going on here is that we are trying to soothe or to provide a sense of pastoral care for you to not worry about what happens when you die. Amida Buddha's wisdom and compassion embraces all sentient beings, and therefore we are born in the Pure Land after we die. Our birth is settled. And if we can truly, truly accept that, then we can actually live our life with a lot less suffering. Recognizing the fact that all of us, we are all going to die at some point or another, I think, even though death can be a taboo or a scary subject, can also be a wonderful way or a gateway for us to solve our petty differences in our life, to resolve the fact that all sentient beings in this world do not deserve to suffer the way that they do. You know, if we all could be united in the fact that, yes, all of us will eventually come to an end, or that my dear friend may not be alive the very next day for me to see them, won't that be something for us to kind of a catalyst for us to sort of live our lives a little bit better, to actually put aside squabbling differences? You know, as a minister or as a priest, I have also seen some ugly sides to death too. Not by the person who has passed away, but for those of them who are still living. I've seen families tear each other apart because they were so consumed with what the person who was departed was leaving them. How much money are they leaving me? They shouldn't get that much money because I was doing more stuff, right? But if we could actually take a step back and think about the fact that all of us are in this same boat together, won't we suffer less? Won't we be able to live our lives a little bit better and more authentically? This is why we talk a lot about death in Jodo Shinchu as well. And in fact, if anything, when we think about Jodo Shinchu Buddhism, in this aspect of Amida Buddha embraces all sentient beings, your death is something that you don't have to worry about. One of the other great aspects of, you know, Buddhist teaching, and actually one of my favorite movie stars, Keanu Reeves, talked about this on the Colbert Show, is he was asked, what happens after we die? And he responded with one of the most human answers I could think of. He says, I know that the ones who love us will miss us. That's what will happen. And so how do we suffer less in this life? This particular message of death, I think, or of what happens after we die, is there so that we will suffer less in life, so that we will not live with so much worry. Yes, with death comes a lot of complications, things to do, busy things that we have to take care of as the living descendants of the person who has passed. But at the same time, it's one of the greatest teachings that that we are confronted with on a daily basis, that we are confronted with. Sadly, even today on a daily basis, we see, you just turn on the news and it's there. But also with our pets as well, when you think about it. With this, of course, great sadness and great heartache can happen. But also with it, a turnabout can happen as well. And embracing a deep sense of appreciation of the life we live now is something I think that this teaching is definitely trying to do. So if I'm too morose sometimes in my talks, I apologize for that, and I don't want to get into that. But I also want to give a deep sense of hope. And a deep sense of hope is that, with all of us here, sitting here and now, is that, and this is easy for me to say, right? Don't worry about what happens after you die. Amida Buddha assures your birth into the Pure Land. Don't worry about the other aspect of what happens after we die. Those who love us will miss us. And in fact, because we are confronted with this, love the ones who are still here, right here and now. You may have a disagreement with someone. You may get into a fight. But I can guarantee you that if you live your life with this ideology, it will bring about less suffering in your life. So I sincerely hope that you enjoyed listening to some of these questions here. I very much enjoy receiving these questions. Next weekend, on the 22nd, I will answer the remaining questions in this box, and then I will put the box back in the foyer, and all of you can start writing questions again, and then in another month's time, I will read the questions and think about the answers again. But I sincerely thank all of you for taking time out of your busy schedules to come here today and to muse the Dharma with me. And please have a very safe and wonderful beginning of summer. And if you are going to go on summer vacation, please enjoy your summer break. Please join me in Gassho by placing your hands together in reverence. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namandabs, 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 namandabs.